Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. In our final conversation with evangelist Deb Luce, we're going to talk about the differences between LDS General Conference and Community of Christ World Conference. She'll give her impressions. One thing I was surprised about is they don't meet nearly as often as LDS do, so you won't want to miss this conversation. Check it out. So one of the things I would really like to do, of course, we're here in Missouri for World Conference, which is quite different.
It's wonderful.
LDS Conference. I'd like to talk about, I've posted a couple of videos already, just really short ones about, hey, here's what I noticed that's a little different. For especially my LDS audience, but even, I've got evangelicals that listen and things like that. Can you talk about and maybe, I don't know, it sounds like you're not really that familiar with LDS General Conference, but if you were to explain it to somebody who didn't know anything about the Community of Christ, how would you explain World Conference to people?
To somebody who's never been here?
Yeah.
Well, there's people from all around the world.
Yes.
We have the Tahitian delegations. We have people from Africa.
And you can tell by the way they're especially the women, the colorful dresses.
The way they dress, yeah.
They're really cool.
The Polynesians, and it's just amazing. And there's just such a presence. Goosebumps again. It's just such a presence. It's so exciting to be in the presence. And then, there's over 2,000 people. I think they said we had over 1,900 delegates. And so.
Oh, that was delegates. That wasn't just people.
I think.
Oh, I thought that was total people.
But then, this year it's even more exciting because we've got the technology, and so they're zooming in people from other places, and
Honduras was one I know.
Yeah, and so, but we come together as brothers and sisters of the family of God, and it's just, our congregations back home, you got 6 or 8 people. Here you got thousands, and then you got these people that sing. And we both talked about the Spirit of God like a fire is burning. I couldn't sing. It was
Same.
just so overpowering with the Spirit, and it was just amazing. And that's what it's like. And then there's people that this is the only place you'll see them, because they're coming from, just exactly. They come from Tahiti, or they come from Canada, or they come from California, and this is where we see each other. My best friend that I told you about, Lori, she comes from Louisville, Kentucky, and so I get to see her once, maybe every 4 or 5 years. And so, but we come to conference, and she's here, and Blake, her husband, is here, and it's just a wonderful time to be together and to know that the Spirit of God is still alive, and it's still at work, and you can see it in the lives of all these people that have come, and then to be able to worship together, to share in discussions, because we have the breakout sessions, the discussions about the resolutions, to go and hear pros and cons and hear what our brothers and sisters are thinking about it, and perhaps learn something and get our perspectives changed. Or our thoughts, our ideas expanded, find out, what it's like to live in a war-torn country, or to force or face persecution, or things that, our country doesn't have to deal with, or the majority of our people in this country don't have to deal with.
Right.
And so, but to come together in the Spirit of Christ, and to experience that love in a huge body is just amazing.
Well, one of the biggest differences, because LDS General Conferences is every April and October, so it's twice a year. When was the last time you guys had a World Conference? It wasn't.
Well, they said 2019, I think.
Yeah,
was
4
the
years
last
ago.
Time. Yeah. But the last time I was here was 2011.
So this isn't something you don't stream it, or do they? I guess they are streaming it now.
They are streaming it. They are doing live stream services in some of the congregations.
But they haven't done that in the past? Like back in 2019, they didn't stream?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I know that most of our congregations didn't even have the ability they didn't wake up to it until COVID,
Right.
the pandemic, when we had no choice but to do it. And unfortunately, a lot of
But
people.
COVID was the best thing for Zoom.
It really was. It really was. And
Zoom took
it was,
off. Should have bought stock in them.
unfortunately, some people didn't jump on the Zoom wagon, and it's so unfortunate that they didn't, because they're missing so much.
Yeah.
I mean, just crazy.
Yeah.
We talked about the Zoom thing. John Mueller is one of the guys who's attended the Zoom.
Okay.
And
You're talking about the Monday night meetings.
yeah.
Yeah.
I ran into him last night in the temple. Never
Oh, you're
seen this
kidding.
guy before, but I saw his name tag on the lanyard, and it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I know that name. Oh, hey, you're Monday night, aren't you? And he's like, I don't know you. I said, I'm the one that tells you can talk. And then he knew who I was. So, yeah, it's just a wonderful thing. But conference is just so unique.
Yeah.
To be able to, be in the temple and worship in the temple like we did last night with the International Peace Award.
Yeah.
And again, to just the music and to be able to be in the presence of God in that way, you don't find it outside of this experience.
Right.
And if you want to experience the Spirit of God in an amazing way, you got to be here. You got to come. You got to experience it.
So, yesterday, Saturday, was the first day of the conference. And I remember I went in there, and typically LDS General Conference, the apostles and some 70s get up to speak up, and maybe the General Society president and some people like that. And basically the audience just kind of sits there and listens, and then they say amen at the end. But in World Conference, it's much more interactive.
Oh, yeah.
They have nine microphones?
10 or 11.
Okay.
I know because he called somebody at lectern 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
I counted 9, but so there's at least 10. But because he'll say, it's weird because it's kind of parliamentary. Like, okay, here are the rules that we're going to talk about. They're listed on page 44 or whatever it was. And so does anybody have any amendments to the rules? And somebody did. And so they got up to so the chair recognizes, whoever, speak. And then so that person spoke. And then do we have anybody that seconds it? Yes. Okay. Now, does anybody oppose? I oppose. Okay. So over lectern 2, you've got 5 minutes. There was literally a countdown clock.
Yeah, they did.
And I was like, okay, stated, okay, so what do you guys think? Do you want to vote? And so typically you'd raise your hand and then who's opposed? And unlike LDS, rarely do you have anybody opposed. But there was one of those, it was like half and half. And I noticed in the rules it said, if you can't tell who won, that we're going to have to we're actually going to count votes. I don't think we've done that yet, but I'm sure that some of those votes, especially 1984, must have been. Well, I guess they didn't count that one either. It wasn't that close with the women in priesthood resolution.
No.
But can you talk about some of the resolutions that are coming up this week? Do you know? I should have brought my program, and then do we have it? We can take a quick pause if you want.
Yeah.
Do you want to go grab it really quick?
Mine's right over there.
Okay, I'll grab it.
Bag. Yeah.
Yeah, talk about what resolutions you guys are going to be talking about this week.
Okay. They actually have something new this year with the the thing that I got on my lanyard, because they're like, well, when you need to vote, you got to use this thing. And it's actually a digitalized little thing that's going to record my vote.
Right,
my
and not
yes or
everybody
my
can
no.
vote. So I have a lanyard.
I have a delegate. You don't have the little
But I'm not
thing.
a delegate, so I
Right.
can't vote.
That's
I mean,
correct.
some of the stuff, I remember on the rules, I was like, I'm voting for the rules. We need to get this over with.
Your vote didn't count.
That needed a
but they didn't
2/3
know that.
majority.
Yeah, right.
I was hanging with my friend Jesse, and I was like, just raise your hand. Come on. We can't sit here and talk about rules. We got to talk about other stuff.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that it was taking them so long to decide on the rules.
Yeah.
Okay. I was hoping to find it in the beginning. Okay, here we go. The resolutions. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we got the one on climate energy or emergency that they're wanting to. Do you want me to kind of read what they actually are? And so,
because this is so. I mean, the amazing thing here is these are put forth just by lay members, right? It's not, you don't have to be an apostle to do this or anything.
Right. They come from jurisdictions like mission centers or region, like the North Central region or something like that. So, for example, the climate emergency it comes from the British Isles Mission Center,
okay,
which is in the United Kingdom, and then they give us a summary and they do all the resolutions, and then they come up with the whereases and all that.
Yeah, there's a lot of whereases, whereas,
and then it comes right down to the resolved, which is just basically what we're going to be voting on. So we've got the climate emergency and the excuse me, they want to remove Section 116.
Oh, let's talk about that one.
Doctrine and Covenants, and they want to put it into the historical records.
Okay, so Section 116, that was a revelation given to Joseph Smith III, if I'm right?
I think so. And it was in 1865.
1865, yeah. Okay, so we're right in the Civil War times.
Right, and it had to do with the, where they were talking about the races.
Right.
And
whether we should ordain blacks, but he didn't use the word black. Right. He called them Negroes because that was the common terminology of the day.
Right.
Which is kind of politically incorrect now.
Yes. And so that's one.
So there's a resolution to move that section to the appendix to basically decanonize it, right?
Yep. To remove it from the Doctrine and Covenants and put it in as a historical record as opposed to the doctrine.
Because one of the things that it said, because to me, race is a big deal. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. Of course, we had a race ban, and I always like to point to the community of Christ and say they never had a race ban, although Joseph Smith III is kind of on record saying,
we'll do it,
but we need to be careful about those blacks.
Yeah.
And so,
which was unfortunate. Yeah.
Yes, very. But at least it wasn't a ban.
Right. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So the resolution is, you know what, we're past that. Let's get rid of it. Let's throw it in the appendix.
And that's coming from the coastal bend in the United States, which I'm not sure exactly where that location is at, where the Coastal Bend Mission Center is.
Okay.
But then we've got the resolution on racial justice.
Okay.
And that's coming from the Greater Pacific Northwest.
Uh-huh.
And so that's all, it's all over the world. We've got the United Kingdom. We've got the Northwest United States. They come from all over, wherever the people feel the need to make these, these resolutions. And they present them, and the discussion groups that we've had were when some of the people that were part of the drafting of these things were actually in the discussions so that they could share where they were coming from a little bit more than just what you're reading on the paper. And so
this is what's so different, because it seems like typically in the LDS church, the leaders come up with something, they hit us with it blind, we want to do this, and then we have to vote. Whereas you guys have had months to look at this. You have a show the camera how thick this book is.
Where is it at?
There
Here?
You go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a binder full of stuff and information about the resolutions. And
right. And we had the Saints Herald, which is our church's magazine, or
the Ensign, or I guess it's not the Ensign anymore, but
they've been publishing since October.
You guys
they
have
started
been talking
printing
about this.
these.
Yeah.
They started printing the resolutions and stuff in the heralds, and so we've had an and they used Zoom meetings to meet every week to discuss the various ones, because it helps to dialogue with people, to be able to understand where somebody's coming from with some of this stuff, which was kind of interesting, because on Monday night, Andrew Bolton on the Monday night Zoom was talking, and he was part of one of the resolutions that we have.
He's a former apostle.
Yes. And he was talking about...
That's another difference. They let apostles retire.
They do it all the time. See, that's not different. That's not strange to me. But yeah, people actually have the right to retire. They still hold, like in
emeritus status.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So, but it's amazing because he was able to share on Monday night a little bit about the perspective of what he's sharing, or the one that they had presented. So yeah, those are some of them. And then they're doing the universal scripture access, where they're wanting to put our Community of Christ scriptures online, which I don't quite understand why we needed a resolution for that. I just think it's a great idea. I think it's wonderful that they're going to do that.
My friend Evan Charlie actually told me he was the one that put forth that resolution. So.
Oh, cool.
But I guess Evan's not going to be here. But
yeah, that's unfortunate. So yeah, and then we've got a resolution to enhance transparency, openness, and disclosure concerning the First Presidency's statement on Community of Christ position on nonviolence, and that's coming from the heart of Texas. And
so I don't know. I don't really understand what the issue is there. Do you know what the issue is there? You don't think the First Presidency is transparent enough on nonviolence?
Well,
because you guys are more peaceful than any Mormon I know.
Well, we try to be, and we profess to be. I'm not sure that we all totally succeed in that, but I think it's something that they're clearly wanting to take can't think of what I want to say, a more out there,
proactive.
Yeah, promoting it more.
We want to promote nonviolence more than we do.
Yeah, I think so. And they want they want it to be as a world church thing, not just a certain area.
Okay.
They want it to be a more universal thing throughout the church, maybe.
The church needs to promote nonviolence more than it does.
I think maybe that's
it
what
seems
they want.
Already very peaceful.
Yeah. Well, but we may be peaceful, but I think they're wanting us to become more active in the nonviolence piece of approach, I think.
Texas with all their guns is doing this?
I don't know for sure.
Must be just those liberal people, the Community of Christ people doing that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we have to unleash God from that box and see where he's going to lead us to go.
All right.
So, yeah, that's another one of them. I think they got 9 of them before the conference. And then there's a resolution on marriage, what we're going to define as marriage, with homosexual marriage or the other things, the different types of marriage that we're going to recognize. I think that's an issue.
Because you guys already support gay marriage, right?
Right.
Now, John Hamer, this was a little bit off topic, but he spoke Friday night for the John Whitmer business meeting. And the one point that really kind of caught my attention was, in 1984, when we ordained women, now we have women apostles and everything. And then I don't know how long it's been since the gay marriage. It's probably been 4 or 5 years, I would say, probably 4 years.
Oh, anyway, that many, yeah.
And he says, we still don't have any gay apostles. Yeah. So there's still discrimination going on.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow. So it sounds like that's still an issue. Is that an issue in your church, would you say?
Unfortunately, where I'm at, I in the area where I'm at, it's not that large of an issue. But I think it's because our area is not that diverse. These small congregations that have 5 or 6 people, it's not something that we deal with on a daily basis. And so ignorance is bliss in some ways, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe I shouldn't say that.
So this resolution, what's it trying to promote?
Okay, so they want it to rescind a previous World Conference Resolution 1182, which states that apostles have the responsibility for establishing and upholding definitions and guidelines, practices, and policies regarding marriage and marriage-like relationships in harmony with established marriage principle, including monogamy and faithfulness, and after review, and approval by the First Presidency. And so what they're wanting, they've got a lot of resolves on that. They got about 8 resolves here. They want that to be rescinded, and they want apostles have the responsibility for establishing and upholding the definitions, which is basically where laws and geographics allow, because it's not something that's acceptable for same-sex marriages outside, in different countries. It's not accepted there.
Well, and that was one of the big things about the marriage revelation from, I'm going to say 4 years ago, I don't know if that's correct, was basically the revelation said we'll recognize gay marriage where it's legal, and where it's not legal, then we don't support gay marriage in those countries.
Right.
So it was very catered kind of internationally. So depending on where you lived, you kind of lived under different,
right.
Which is very different from the correlated LDS, where like we have the same thing everywhere.
Right. And I think that's, it's one of the more difficult issues, because at prior conferences, this is just my personal, from when I would attend as a delegate, there were some delegations that actually had to leave the deliberations in the sanctuary, leave the business sessions in the sanctuary, because if the government from where they lived found out they were even discussing it, their lives could literally be in danger, and they could literally be imprisoned when they returned home. And so, you have to be sensitive to that. And so, it's it's a difficult situation.
Well, and I even know someone voiced recently disapproval of this monogamy standard because this person was in a polyamorous relationship and felt like they were being discriminated against, which was kind of surprising to me, because Mormons have a big thing with polygamy, but polyamory, that's way off limits. And so it was interesting to me that person was taking exception to monogamy, but it wasn't a polygamy angle either.
Right.
So some of these disputes are very interesting from an outside perspective, I will say.
Sure. Yeah. Well, from an inside perspective as well, sometimes. Not always the easiest things to discuss, for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So that sounds like it might be a heated
It could
discussion.
be one that's going to require, I don't know necessarily heated. I don't necessarily know that I may be naive, but I don't see things getting heated necessarily.
Okay.
Fortunately, with the way that they do the discussions and allow the opportunity, maybe the heat doesn't get too hot within the 5 minutes that they're allowed to discuss their views.
Well, I know, was it President Vesey or President McMurray? One of the two said that they really, I think it was Vesey, said that they really learned from 1984, because that was heated with the ordination of women. And so they've tried to give you guys lots of notice, lots of learning materials, lots of discussion.
Right.
And so that has helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It has. And it's been beneficial. Sometimes it's good to learn from mistakes.
And in the LDS church, I mean, that was the other interesting. Does anybody dissent? And they didn't say, go talk to your stake president. They were like, okay, noted. There were,
Yeah. No, it's a very good democratic process, or whatever, if that's the right wording for it. But it's, you have your voice, and you can, as a delegate, I got these little yellow slips of paper that if I decide I want to say something, years ago, I've been told that years ago in conference, it was like whoever could shout the loudest, got the attention, Mr. President, and if they insisted, so that the littler, quieter person never had an opportunity to share. And it was also one of those that if the if the people who were for something, were more louder than the people who were against it, then they never got a voice. And so then it went to little cards that you turned in at the lectern, and then they would recognize you. And that has evolved too, so that now it doesn't matter how loud you might yell from a place in the sanctuary, until you get your little card into that lectern, you're not going to be recognized by the chair to speak.
Oh, okay.
And so that's a good thing. And so it's a process that makes it fair for anybody. They take pros and cons. As you said, they're going to alternate between what your views are. If you're for it, they specifically, if somebody's speaking for it, we'll recognize them, and then we need somebody that wants to speak against it. So they recognize everybody's voice.
Yeah, and they even said, and we're going to pause a minute and see if there's anybody in Honduras that wants to say.
Yeah.
I remember that too. That was interesting.
Yeah, and that's great. Everybody's got their voice.
Right.
We're a world church. It's great. So, yeah, and then they got opposing Christian Zionism, and I'm sorry, but I'm not very well versed in that one. I don't know for sure about that one.
Well, I kind of wanted to talk about that one because it sounded like Christian Zionism is like we're pro-Israel, at least as I understand it. But there are some people that are like, well, what about the Palestinians? And so, and I know, well, two things that came off the top of the head. Number one, like that's a crazy issue. Why would you even bring up a resolution in World Conference? Like, what is the community of Christ going to do about peace in Israel? What do they expect even to happen? Yeah. So there's part of me that says, like, you can resolve to do anything you want, but who cares? Because what are you going to do in Israel to actually influence peace?
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any comments on that, or?
No, because I don't. Unfortunately, like I say, it's way over my head for how we would do that.
Yeah.
My vision isn't real good in that part. You're maybe going to have to cut this part. Right? So,
all right. Well, we can move on to the next one. That's fine.
And then compassion for refugees and the United Nations World Refugee Day. And that's basically the church setting aside a specific day that we're going to recognize to be, supportive of refugees and things like that. That, again, to me is not something that seems to be, it should be an issue, but,
There might be some immigration haters that might speak out against that. I don't know.
I'd like to hope not, but there's always a possibility. Obviously, there's a need for it because somebody felt the need to bring this resolution to the conference.
Uh-huh.
So, and I guess, Iowa, we aren't facing border wars. And so, people need to be sympathetic to what other people are facing, and in other countries as well. I tend to keep blinders on because it's the United States, but there's other countries that are having it far worse.
Yeah.
So there are issues that are smaller issues that are becoming world issues. And I think it's good that the church is, staying involved and recognizing things, bringing it to all of our awareness.
Do you know, and I know we're not quite done, or are we done with resolutions?
Yep, that's it.
Oh, that's it.
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
How does a resolution get on the schedule to be talked about?
Well, I'm not sure how that happens. I think that the first presidency determines, based upon the resolutions that are brought forth. These were what were presented, and this is what's going to be discussed this week. But I guess in the meeting that we had yesterday, it's kind of the agenda is up to the first presidency that because that's what one of the rules was, that they can make the agenda and maybe we won't have time to discuss this. And
because I noticed there was a ranking in there about which we were going to discuss
right,
first, second, third, whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because it had a score on there. I don't know how they voted.
Yeah.
There was some sort of a vote that happened there.
But I don't know who did that.
Okay.
I don't think I was part of that. So, yeah, I think that's first presidency and world church leaders that are, you know, maybe determining what it is. I don't know.
Because they've already done there was a change to the Board of Trustees for Graceland University that people voted on yesterday,
Right.
I remember. And they have these little clicker voter things, I think.
Yeah, that's that thing that I was telling you about. Yeah.
So. I'm here, but I obviously can't vote for that. I don't have a clicker.
You're right. That doesn't count. So, but that's the electronic ones. The I think that they said when it comes too close,
Then they'll count them.
then they'll count them, because that's going to manually count them. And so the things that they did, that they voted on yesterday.
Because first they just raise hands, and if they can tell
If they can tell.
or
Yeah.
some kind. I don't. Sometimes the majority is okay, and sometimes you need 2/3. I don't know the rules behind that, but
And then they said that we'll find out the results of those on Monday. They'll print them in the bulletin that we'll get on Monday.
okay,
Yeah. So
cool.
yeah, it
So
is.
can you guys see? This is really different.
Yeah. Need to come and see. But yeah.
So today we attended the worship service,
The communion service.
the
yeah.
communion service, and so
worship.
that was interesting because you had a practice that went till 11 o'clock last
Well, our
night.
practice actually started last night at 9:00, which is unusual because normally they don't start them that late. But apparently, with whatever the schedule is, with everything else going, that's where they were able to fit it in. And so we were at rehearsal from 9:00 until almost 11, like 5 minutes to 11. And the communion service was much different this year in the way that it was presented.
Well, it's strange because in LDS we're just like we have communion every week except for General Conference. We skip that
Oh.
because it's just too hard. Because you had 3,000 people in there probably.
Well, I don't know
Because
that
every
we
other
had that
row was
many.
empty,
Yeah.
so that you guys could pass the communion to.
Well, the reason every other row was empty was because of COVID precautions. They
Oh,
were
okay.
implementing those. But in times past, we normally serve communion on the first Sunday of the month in our congregations. But we always have it at World Conference, no matter what day that falls on. And so, and in times past, the emblems would all be on the rostrum in the silver trays, and the servers would be down in the front on the one side, and they would come up and they would get the emblems at the time when they were serving it, and then they would go up on the rostrum, and then they'd all come down and they'd all go to the various parts in the sanctuary or the balcony where they were serving, and then, they would serve it. They had the prayers and they served it. This year, with COVID being what it was, they did the different little packets, and it contained either grape juice and bread, or orange juice and a rice cake, or water and a little corn tortilla chip type thing. And that was to represent all the countries from around the world and the way that different places celebrate and use the sacrament. And then this year, every other row of the sanctuary was empty because of COVID. And then we served it in baskets instead of people having to reach their hands in to take the individual trays and the open juice and open bread. They were sealed kind of in their own packets for people, as well as this year they included the words of blessing on the card. Did you get your words of blessing today?
I did not, but
Oh,
we'll
no.
talk about that later. Yeah,
Okay.
I was standing up because my back hurt, and I don't know what they thought, but they didn't.
Oh,
didn't
no.
hand me one.
Sorry to hear that.
But
But yeah, and then we served in reverse order, because we served so far as normally it's the presider that serves the servers, and then the servers serve the congregation. And so it's kind of, start at the top and go backwards. And this year,
they served the congregation
servers,
first.
we served the congregation first,
Yeah.
and then the servers were served, and then the presiders were served. And And we all took it together. We all, normally when you take the bread, you eat the bread, or when you take the wine, you drink the wine and you put it right back. But this time we did it all together in unison.
Right.
And it was pretty amazing to hear all the noise. It sounded like rain. I wasn't sure about the fire. They compared it to the sound of a fire, which was good, but I thought it sounded more like God raining down on us. I thought it was pretty cool.
Well, and the blessing was in Creole. It was like, well, two things.
The prayer.
The prayer was in Creole, which I had no idea. I've never heard that before. And I noticed that President Vesey was preparing the sacrament on the rostrum as well. Did
all
you
of the
notice
first
that?
presidents.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the rest of them, but I was just like, you don't see President Nelson doing that.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, let's talk a little bit about translation. So the other funny thing, there were a couple times when somebody would say, "You're speaking too fast for the translators. Please don't talk so fast." And I was like, is that why our people talk so slow? Because it sounds, sometimes I swear it wants to put you to sleep because it's so slow. But it's for the translators.
Yes.
And there were a couple people that were speaking too fast, and they were like, "Slow down."
Yeah. That's something you'll hear a lot this week. Yeah. Because we're used to talking really fast.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people to say it, in another language and be able to do the interpretation.
And they had a deaf person doing the sign language and everything. Yeah. And I was just like, it really, I think the LDS Church does this too, but it's not as noticeable. And so that was just kind of very interesting to me to watch that, because it is you really get the flavor of this is an international church at World Conference.
It is. It's amazing. The motel where I'm staying, the Tahitian delegation is there.
Oh.
And so this morning at, let's see what time, I left the motel at before 7 o'clock. So it was like probably 6:30 in my hall. I could hear in my room from the hallway, they were singing in the hallway in French, singing their songs at 6:45 in the morning in the hallway.
Oh, wow.
And it's just wonderful. And years ago when I stayed at the Red Roof Inn, they were there, and they'd come down every morning and they'd be in the lobby area just singing their in their Polynesian attire, and it was just, it filled the whole place with joy, and it was just like everybody was part of the family, and it was just amazing to it's just crazy.
You guys are better singers than we are, I have to say. The Community of Christ.
When we get in a big group, we are. Don't talk about our little congregations. But yeah, when you get us in a group, it's just amazing.
Yeah. And also they had English, Spanish, and French for a lot of the songs. They'd have the one verse in all three languages. Yep. And so that was interesting. And
Yeah.
And then last night, I remember there was the Peace Prize. They had a Peace
Award.
Peace Award. They give that away every year. I didn't know who the person was that received it. I know Jane Goodall was the first recipient of the Peace Prize.
Yeah, they've had different people. And last night it was that CPT organization, the Peacemakers teams. And so they were more of a group, kind of, as opposed to one individual person. Right. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, and it's wonderful that Shaw Family Foundation has taken it up and going to be sponsors with us. Forever. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. So
it sounds like they're doing some pretty profound work, And
I don't know if it's just a theme of this conference. I kind of think it's not, but I've noticed there seems to be a lot of emphasis on look at the suffering of others and what can you do about it. Is that a common theme, or is that just a theme this year?
No, I don't think it's just this year. I think that's the way that they've been trying to lead the church, for the past several years, and looking to the worth of all people and who's your neighbor, everybody's our neighbor, whether they're right next door or whether they're a mile, a world away.
Right.
And I think that's where they're wanting us to expand our vision and where we're supposed to go with Christ's mission, because that's our mission. Mm-hmm. And that's everywhere. But yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's been very interesting. So the conference continues
through Friday.
Is Monday going to be similar to Saturday, or are there going to be differences? Do you know?
It'll be similar, but like there'll be the quorum meetings. And so
I don't get to go to those, though.
No, you won't. But for those of us who are members and whatever, delegates in the priesthood will be able to go to those. I think for non-members, I think they have, or not non-members, but non-delegates, I think they do have some type of discussion groups that are kind of like the time for sharing. And then they bring get the various priesthood offices. That's the quorums, the evangelists all meet together and each office meets together and they discuss the resolutions to see, their various perspectives from them as a body. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as opposed to just individual people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an exciting time.
Well, it's fun because it seems like we alternate between the auditorium and the temple. There's a lot of stuff going on in both places.
Yeah.
I posted a little short video on Friday night and said, and I'm going to the Whitmer business meeting, which you were at.
Yeah.
And then somebody actually showed up and he says, I'm here because I heard your thing and I was here. And he said, I want to go see the stone church because you were talking about the beautiful stained glass. And I was like, yes, you need to see that. Yeah. I love the stone church. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So have we covered it all? Is there anything else we need to talk about?
I don't think so. we shared a lot for sure.
Yeah.
It's been good. It's been fun.
Yes.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I had to twist your arm. I almost broke it off.
Yeah. My arm's still sore.
Well, Deb Luce, I really appreciate you being here on Gospel Tangents.
Thank you.
Sharing more about your church and your calling, and I think this is fantastic.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with evangelist Deb Luce. So, Deb, I hope you didn't float away. I know the Mississippi River is rising in your area of the country, there in Iowa, and hopefully it stays away from your house. So, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I mean this in all sincerity. You are really a literal blessing in my life, and I appreciate our amazing conversations we had last week of April. So, thank you. I consider you a wonderful friend. In the next conversation, we're going to turn to a BYU professor with a beard. Thomas Wayment makes a reappearance on our show, and we'll talk a little bit more about his new edition of the New Testament.
Oh, because I know your previous work with Adam Clark and that sort of thing in the Joseph Smith translation, that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that.
Kind of controversial, I guess, too.
Yeah, for some, and it's unfortunate because the work has been both mischaracterized and it's been attacked for reasons that I think are completely unfair.
Thanks for listening to Gospel Tangents. If you'd like to support me, please subscribe at gospeltangents.com or on patreon.com/gospeltangents, or you can watch entire videos at youtube.com/gospeltangents. I really can't do this without your support. I'd love to do it full time, and I need a lot more people that are willing to help me out. So I'd really appreciate that. So thanks again for listening, and don't forget to check out some of our other videos.